I'm Darren Wood. I'm the General Manager of Harrison Civils and Norfolk Rivers Consortium.
What does the General Manager do for us?
So I look after all of the registrations for the scheme from customers. So the customers will register online that they're interested in the scheme, and then I'll take the customers through the 3 stages of the scheme. Stage 1 is where we arrange with the customer to go out and see their property. So we send a surveyor out to the property, essentially to make sure that we can physically install the tank at their property. So we cover issues like access issues, whether they've got enough room in their garden, and those types of physical issues that are involved when installing a tank. If that's suitable, then we move on to stage 2. Stage 2 involves our civil engineer doing some back office reports and investigations, and he puts together what's called a technical mitigation report. That ensures that the property itself, so not just the village, but the individual property, is suitable for the scheme, and that again we can go ahead with the installation at that property. At that point in time, we go back to the customer and we confirm to them that stages 1 and 2 have been successful, and we then ask them whether they want to proceed to stage 3. Give them plenty of opportunity to ask any questions that they might have at that point in time, and then we also ask them to sign a letter to confirm that they do want to proceed to stage 3, and that's the point in time where we get the lawyers involved to draw up the paperwork that we need to have in order to progress and install the tank.
Is this about the environment or replacing septic tanks?
I think it's both of those. It's clearly what we find is a lot of properties have an old style septic tank, which are maybe 30 to 40 years old. They're not really treating the sewage in the tank itself, so the output from the tank is still untreated sewage, albeit hopefully no solids. And that is making its way into the ground or into a local ditch and eventually working its way through to the local river network. So it is about replacing the old septic tank with a new sewage treatment plant, which in turn helps the environment by reducing that pollution in the river.
Is it really free?
Okay, so lots of people ask about whether the installation is really free. You as the homeowner don't pay us to install the sewage treatment plant. So from your point of view, you don't part with any money. How it's funded is the developers within Norfolk that are trying to obtain planning permission. They're the ones that effectively pay for you to have your sewage treatment plant installed at your property. They're happy with paying for that because it means that they get their planning permission. We're obviously happy as a company because we're being paid to install the tank, and you as a homeowner, you're happy because you've got a brand new sewage treatment plant that you've not had to pay for.
Is the scheme funded by the government?
Our scheme is not funded by the government, no. So as I said, we don't get paid directly from the homeowner. So we fund the scheme ourselves as a business by carrying out those 3 stages that we've talked about and actually installing the tank. So after the tank's installed, we will then sell that credit that is produced by installing that tank. Our main customer to sell those credits to is Norfolk Environmental Credits, and then they sell those credits on to local developers. So just like Norfolk Environmental Credits in Norfolk, we have other councils throughout the UK that we also sell the credits to.
What does maintaining the sewage plant require?
So in regard to maintaining the sewage treatment plant, we will visit the property 4 times within the first year to carry out water tests to make sure that it's working properly and to do all the maintenance needed on the plant itself. There's no charge to you as the homeowner for us to do that. In fact, you don't pay for the first inspection until month 24, so until it's been in there 2 years. In addition to the annual service cost, which is at the moment £150 plus the VAT, you also will need to get the tank emptied every now and again. Now we will tell you when that's needed. So one of the tests we do at each anniversary is we do a sludge test to confirm how much the tank is full and whether it needs to be emptied. So we do ask you to wait until we advise you whether the tank needs emptying or not. Generally, we find that's every 2 to 3 years on an average. So that can either be more often or less often, depending on what you're doing at the moment with your septic tank. On the annual inspection, we will do a sludge measuring test as well, which will tell us how full the tank is. We never recommend that you empty the tank unless an approved graph service engineer recommends that you have it emptied. And even at that point in time, it's important that it's not emptied completely, because it does need a certain amount of sludge to be left in the tank.
Is it noisy? How much does it cost to run?
So one of the great things about the graph sewage treatment plant is that it only needs to run when it needs to. So it's quite clever from that point of view. So it only runs for 10 hours out of the 24 hours a day, which obviously from an energy point of view is great, because it means that it's costing you less to actually run the tank itself. So for an average house, that would be around about £65 per year to run that plant. From a noise point of view, it's extremely quiet. The compressor is housed externally in its own little cabinet, which can be placed up to 18 metres away from the tank itself. So that also means that the cabinet can be tucked behind a shed or in a hedge line, somewhere that it's not obvious, and it keeps the noise down.
What does the legal process involve?
So there's two main documents. There's a contract. So the contract is between the customer and ourselves as Norfolk Rivers Consortium, and that allows us to come along and install the tank at the property. It also covers off the servicing for the first 5 years of the tank, because that's important. The separate document is what's called the unilateral undertaking. That's a document between the homeowner and the local authority. So that is registered against the property itself, and means that the current owner, together with any future owners, it's their responsibility to really look after that plant, make sure it's serviced, and make sure that it's working properly in conjunction with ourselves.
How do you prioritise the work for your customers?
Yes, we get many registrations through on our website every day. So my job is to look at those registrations and see where the interest is coming from. So ideally, from our point of view, what we look at this as a community project. So we want to go out to a particular village where there's lots of interest and to liaise with them directly. So we'll often pick one or two of those people that have registered, discuss the project with them and let them know how it works. And if they're happy to be an ambassador for the scheme, we get them to perhaps arrange a meeting at a local village hall or a church hall. We can then produce flyers which give the time and date of that meeting, and then the local residents will distribute those within the village, making sure that as many people as possible know about the meeting, because we do think it's important that if we're going to go to a village, that people don't miss out on the opportunity to have their septic tank replaced. That meeting then takes place, so we fully support that. We go along and do the presentation at the village meeting, and then we often find that that also increases the number of registrations in those following days once people have been able to ask those questions that are really important to them.